This is Evelyn Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. I'm based here in Los Angeles, and we have 7 counselors here in the LA area and 1 in Chicago, and we work with students all over the country. And I'm here today with Bret Ferrante of Black Card Circle, and he's an investment advisor. So he is going to talk to us a little bit about the finances of sending your kid to college. Bret, you want to say hi?
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Evelyn. This is great.
Super. So I'll tell you what, let's start with kind of a good place to start, which is how much does college cost? And the cost of college is going to be different depending on whether you go to public or private university and whether or not you go stay in state or go out of state. So just, I'll just throw some numbers around, and just to be clear, public universities usually have an in-state and an out-of-state cost. Private universities have one cost for everyone. And when we talk about college cost, we talk about not only the tuition, but also the room and board, which is the meal plan, and then the books and the travel and other sort of incidental costs. So when we add all of that together, we call that cost of attendance, COA. For public universities, if you're in California, where I am, an in-state university will cost, an in-state public university will cost somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000 a year. So the Cal State system is going to be about $25,000, including tuition, room and board, books, all that good stuff. And the UC system is going to cost about $35,000 a year. All those costs wrapped into one. If you're looking at an out-of-state university, it could range in the public university realm. It could range from $20,000 to $55,000 is probably the highest out-of-state public university. And if you're looking at private universities, your costs could be anywhere from $30,000 or $40,000 all in to all the way up to $73,000 for private universities. Holy cow, that's a lot of money. PS times 4. So that's why I've invited Bret to come talk to me today. So let's start with, when should parents start saving for their kids' college education, Bret?
Well, saving is something that takes time. So the habit to start saving is something that you should do now, and always best starting now. The more time that you have to invest, the more you're going to make on that investment dollar. I always relate it to baking a cake. You can't short circuit it sometimes. It's not microwave popcorn. So in the investment world, a lot of times you've heard of this. There's the rule of 72 is something we go by, just to give a little idea of how much time plays factor in. And that says that if you earn 6% on your money, then it's going to take you 12 years to double it. So doubling it would be a great way to invest the money and get return on it, but that 12 years can't be short-circuited. So now is always best.
Well, it's interesting that it's 12 years because you apply to college in your 12th grade. So does that mean you should start saving when your child is in 1st grade if you're looking to double your money?
Yes. Well, the more time you give it, the more you're going to be able to make investment dollars off of it. So now, when you're looking at your finances, though, there's other factors that you need. I mean, when you get to the point where you're close to spending it, and you don't have 12 years to give to it, then you really actually want to start playing some defense with it. It's where you start to take a look to see, okay, this is what my budget's going to look like for college. So now I want to make sure that I'm not going to take any losses right before and then in the years leading up to being able to spend it. So now you can plan accordingly. So the time for making money off of your money requires a lot of it, starting really early. But you can also be mindful of it as you're leading up to spending it, and do some things that help you at least beat inflation there.
So give us some examples of ways to save for college. Like, how exactly where do you put your money to use it later down the road for college?
Yeah, so well, the stock market is the way to go for growth. So when you have the time to grow, the stock market is having a piece of the economy, and we live in a world that's ever expanding, and an economy that's expanding, and being part of that growth means owning pieces of the stock market. You can do that through stocks, you can do that through mutual funds, but that growth comes with volatility, and volatility is something that you want to avoid when you're leading up to spending that money. So again, you're making your plans the years prior, you're figuring out where you want to apply to, and now you want to make sure that the money is there for those particular institutions. You should go into other areas such as bonds. There are other types of funds that can be used that are not going to be now trying to make money off of that money, but are being defensive and protecting it so that it's there when you need to write those checks.
The next thing that we had talking about is, will we qualify for financial aid? And this is not necessarily something that you're an expert on. So what I would like to say on this is financial aid is a huge part, and college cost is a huge part of the way we've started and the way we go through the college search process with families. And what we always say is you should talk to your financial advisor and know how much you can afford to pay for college. So the truth is, financial aid is sort of a huge box of information. And I have a 35-minute webinar posted on the Magellan website that I will put a link to underneath this video so that you can learn a little bit more. It's one of those things where if you understand how it works, and if you understand the track records of all of the players, you won't be surprised in the end. So that's what I would say about financial aid. The next question, though, is if we can't afford college, or if we can't afford what the cost will end up being, what should we do? What's your advice on that, Bret?
Well, unfortunately, I can't do anything to change the cost of tuition, but what I would suggest is this is really a great use of debt. And getting a loan is what I would do. I encourage people a lot of times to think of their finances the same way a business would think of using debt. And the analogy is easy when you think of your salary as income. That's the type of income that you have. Your expenses are all the things that you use to feed yourself and house yourself and hopefully have a little fun as well. So just as an entrepreneur might have an incredible idea and a good plan, they oftentimes don't have the money to give themselves the time or the ability to start that company. And ultimately that company is going to be valuable because it earns all the income out of that business. So hopefully that business, so when you get the loan, you are going to be able to earn that business is going to earn income, and that's what makes the business valuable. Just the same way that you invest money in your education to earn a salary, and your potential salary for your whole future career, the lifespan of your career, adds up to a lot. So a little bit of investment in cost of education to create that future salary income is exactly what debt's supposed to do. The danger is too much debt. Just like businesses can get into too much debt, so can your personal finances. You don't want to become an indentured servant. You want to avoid too much debt.
Right. So how do I know how much debt is too much debt?
All right. Well, first thing that I would do is make a calculation that requires you figure out three things. Number one, how much debt are you going to accumulate? So after you figure out which institution you're at, you add up all those 4 years, figure out how much you can contribute, and you'll know what your debt is. Then you should have an idea of how much you expect to earn. What is going to be that first couple years salary that you will be able to achieve coming out of college? And then the last is, so that's something you can figure out in yourself. And the last is then to try to determine how much of that salary are you going to be able to save every year. Now here I can help a little bit. There's a lot of research that says that 10 to 20% of your income should be saved just for retirement. So you can do some calculations to maybe save 25%. The more you make, it's easier to save higher percentages. It all just depends on the lifestyle you have. That's something, again, you make a decision, but take whatever your salary is, multiply it by, say, 20%, and that's the amount of money that you're going to then have year after year to pay down that debt. And I really would like to, I would like to see someone coming out of college be able to pay down their debt in 5 to 7 years, because that really means that then the next 5 to 7 years, they're doing that same, taking that same discipline and now saving for a house, and come 30 years old, you've got yourself a down payment for a house rather than being able to just start at that point. So keeping it, doing that calculation allows you to figure out how long that debt's going to last. And again, you don't want to be an indentured servant. Let that debt serve you so that you can then earn money for yourself.
That's great. And on the how much do you expect to earn when you graduate, it's not it's not easy to figure out like to the penny what that's going to be, but you could easily go on payscale.com, or you could go to a college career center and sort of get a feel for starting salaries for college graduates for for that college, and that way you can sort of estimate what you think you'll be earning when you graduate. Because some people might think, well, I have no idea how to know what that number is going to be. But you won't be able to nail it down exactly, but you'll be able to get it kind of within a range. And then the other thing you mentioned is that opportunity cost, and I think that's where too much debt comes in, right? I always tell people, like, if you're not in the market, if you're not really able to afford a $3 million home, you shouldn't go to open houses of $3 million homes, right? Like you can't shop in an environment that's too expensive for what you can afford. And the truth is some colleges give, and again, this is part of my financial aid webinar, but some colleges give money to people who need it. Some colleges give money to people who have good grades and test scores, but every college does not do that. So, you might end up with choices of a very expensive college and a less expensive college. And when you multiply that delta by 4 years, we could be talking about a serious amount of debt.
Yep, absolutely right. I think, when you're looking at just the numbers, if I was to look at the calculation wise, based on what I was talking about, then you get the same salary potential out of less tuition dollars. Just means that the value of those tuition dollars is more. But there's a lot that goes into it, more than just a mathematical calculation. Obviously, there's the experience of it. But the other thing that is also the idea of opportunity cost really means that even if you're not going into debt, those dollars are going to be coming from somewhere. If they're coming from a vacation, if they're coming from a second home, that's one thing. But if putting those dollars towards college means that you're sacrificing retirement for the parents or any other sort of basic needs, then that's where you want to look and say, maybe the value of a college that doesn't cost as much but still gives me the opportunity to earn the same amount is a better deal for me.
Right. And this is definitely where we tell people this is where you should talk to your financial advisor, because they know your complete financial picture. That's not something that we deal with. The other thing is there are loans available for the college expenses. No one's going to loan you money for your retirement, right?
That's right. Yep. You get some Social Security, but don't count on that funding at all, for sure.
All right. So any more just kind of top level advice for parents who maybe have 7th or 8th graders and there's still a little bit of time before they're going to be spending money on college?
Yes, I do think you really want to think of it as 2 phases. And the phase from 3 to even 5 years before you start saving is when you want to be defensive with it. So as much you take a lot of discipline early on. When you start early, you can just use the power of time to invest. Put the money away. But then when you're getting closer to the time to spending it, that's when you need to be mindful and say, it's not just a matter of putting it away. It's a matter of now making sure it's in a position that when I write that check, it's going to be what I expect it to be.
Got it. Super. Well, thank you for this great advice and helping our families sort of think through the money part of college, which is definitely a source of stress for so many people today. If you have any questions for Bret, what we'll do is we'll put his website on the bottom of the closing slide of this video, and you know how to reach us. We're at magellancounseling.com. And thank you, Bret, for joining me today.
Well, thanks again for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope all the information is valuable.